sexual anarchy.
Get in a long tube with a bunch of D's.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
I'm a fatty fat fatso.
Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing.
He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
They want to make you drink Starbucks every day from now until forever. On the nation, Waldorf Nation. Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to the show. Had a little bit of a time off. Took some much needed vacation, but we're back. It's a little bit of time to recharge and refresh, and to get a little bit away from the news cycle. Which is, of course, unfortunately, as terrible as when I left it. So, we've got plenty of that. We have Giuliani dripping lies and oil from somewhere. We have an interview, a couple parts of that interview, by the way, that Giuliani had on Newsmax, because it's news to the max. Talking about bombing Russian churches. Fascinating. We have armed thugs in Colorado coming to your door. If you're a black person, of course, and have voted. And that's disastrous. We have a report talking about how, even though we've had Russian accounts being banned on social media, how that actually hasn't fixed any problem with the right wing on social media. Interesting. We've got that. We've got Twitter suspending the Babylon Bee satire site. I'm going to weigh in on that. That should be an interesting discussion. So all of that stuff, that's what we have here. All right. With all further ado, right? Or is it without? I think it's without. I don't know. Anyway, let's dive in. Interesting way to start the show. Oh, before we do, please like and share the stream. Now we have been absolutely very buried in the algorithm, so I have a lot of catching up to do with that. Let's do it. All right. Former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani was spreading the false claim, of course, that the United States has been energy independent under the former administration, the administration, of course, of Donald Trump. And that's why gas prices were so low, because we didn't need oil or gas from Russia. Well, this happened, as I said, in an interview on Newsmax, where he is, of course, going to spread all sorts of falsehoods. Take a look.
A year and a half ago at this time, we were energy independent. We didn't need oil or gas from Russia. We didn't need it from Saudi Arabia. We didn't need it from Venezuela. In fact, we were beginning to sell oil and gas. So if we had kept Trump and the American people weren't defrauded in voting for a lifetime criminal for president, we would now be energy independent. Now, 64% of the American people, that has to include Democrats, have said if Trump were president, this wouldn't happen.
All right, so look, obviously, of course we were energy independent under Trump. I mean, all they had to do was turn to Rudy Giuliani's hair, and then you would have all the oil that you need, just dripping right off, just literally melting right in front of your face. Look, obviously, no, that's ridiculous. All right. No, we were so energy independent. We didn't need the Russians' oil. We didn't need the Saudi oil. Oh, really? Oh, interesting. Then riddle me this, right? Why was Donald Trump consistently trying to kiss the ass of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, at every single opportunity? Oh, MBS. Why don't you just sell us that oil? Come on, please. Now, that was after, of course, MBS had ordered the murder of a Washington Post journalist. Of course, I guess I really don't expect Donald Trump to care about a murdered journalist. In fact, he probably looks at that and says, oh, yeah, get him, get the Washington Post, yeah. Fun. So now, in fact, the Trump administration, getting to the factual information here, back in 2020, the Trump administration was so worried about the price of gas actually being too low. They actually tried to lobby to get Saudi Arabia to cut oil production. Now, what would happen if you cut the oil production? Obviously, you would raise gas prices. That's the whole point. Now, at that time, of course, gas prices were incredibly low as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So you had oil companies that were struggling. I know it's a weird thing to talk about, especially given the context here. I don't really consider losing a few billions of dollars when you're an incredibly, incredibly wealthy, well-off corporation. Not only that, but a corporation that gets billions of dollars a year in oil subsidies from the government, from the taxpayer. This is you and I. We are paying the oil companies. And so I don't really like to consider them to be quote unquote struggling, especially when you say that, when you look at the fact that during the coronavirus pandemic, before and afterwards and during, the regular American, working class person has been struggling quite a bit. So now let me go to a tweet here. This is on April 2nd of 2020. This is what Trump had said, quote, "Just spoke to my friend MBS, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who spoke with President Putin of Russia, and I expect and hope that they will be cutting back approximately 10 million barrels and maybe substantially more, which if it happens will be great for the oil and gas industry. Could be as high as 15 million barrels. Good, great, News for everyone, he tweeted minutes later. Wait, how is rising gas prices good for everyone? Even though they were, yes, incredibly low at that time as a result of COVID, how's raising gas prices good for regular people? It's not. It's not. But again, he was doing this to try to protect oil and gas companies from COVID-fueled, no pun intended, losses of the billions of dollars. Now, what happened after he made this announcement on Twitter? Oil prices surged, of course. They were about $25 per barrel shortly before midday on that same day. Now, here's the thing. The Saudis, Donald Trump had threatened them, first asked them, then threatened them, to try to cut their domestic supply. What did Saudi Arabia do? They actually increased their supply by about 300,000 barrels. Oops. Now, the reason that they were doing this, of course, is that they were engaged in a price war with Russia. Now, the whole thing was, we have this lack of demand, right, because of COVID, which is tanking oil prices, and we have a lot of supply. So let's just increase the supply so we can screw over the Russians. Well, hey, that's what it is, right? And so that's what happened. Now, even at that time, the U.S. was still importing Russian oil. Now, that's not a lot of it, about 10,850 barrels per day. Now, in reality, Russian oil, as I have pointed out numerous times on the show before, is actually not a huge part of the U.S. energy mix. We actually import about 8% of our oil from Russia. So, again, dripping with lies, just dripping. Now, look, as far as energy independence, you got to understand, what does that actually mean? It doesn't mean like, we are independent of any other country where we get our energy needs. No, that's a misnomer. It's actually an industry term, meaning that we have exported more oil than we import. Now, you might think, well, look, if we're exporting more oil, that actually means that we have a lot of oil and the gas prices should go down. Well, not necessarily. That's not necessarily correlated, right? Yes, usually when you have a pretty large supply of something, market forces will try to force that price downward a bit, right? That's generally how it's supposed to work. But here's the thing, right? So now, just because we became a net exporter does not necessarily mean that prices were low, the way that the way that I just explained that. So now, because, and this is how it works, the oil companies are private, and they drill it, they take it out of the ground, and they sell it on the open market for a profit. That's it. They'll sell it to other countries, or they'll, sell it to gas companies here in the United States. It doesn't matter to them. They'll sell it wherever they will make the most profit. That's it. And by the way, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. It is literally their fiduciary responsibility to maximize profit for their shareholders. So that's it. It's not our oil. It's not American oil. There's no such thing. It's been given to the private oil companies to do whatever the hell they want with. Now, we could change that, of course, by nationalizing our oil. But of course, we can't do that because that would be socialism. And nobody wants that, do they? So no, increasing domestic production doesn't mean at all that we're energy independent by any means. It just means more profit. And so that's it. As for the claim that, of course, Biden made it so that we're not energy independent, actually, no, we were still a net exporter for quite some time under Biden. Even as late as last year, the majority of last year. And so I'll give you the details on that in a fact check from Daniel Dale. But first, let me just say, Biden doesn't control gas prices or oil prices in a private market. Now, you can make decisions that affect the industry, of course, but the president does not control gas prices. So now, going to the fact check about the exporter of oil, right? In 11 months of 2021, the United States was still a net exporter of oil. He said, in fact, contrary to prominent Republican suggestion over the last month that that U.S. had just recently started consuming Russian energy under Biden, U.S. energy imports from Russia had actually spiked during the Trump presidency. Weird. Why would it spike under the Trump presidency when we were actually the net exporter? It's almost as if we're helping out Russia there by buying a lot of their oil. Very strange. I wonder why Donald Trump would do something like that. That's super weird. But no, again, the reason they're saying this is, hey, look at gas prices. Aren't they insane? It must be Joe Biden's fault. You did this. No, they didn't. At least Joe Biden didn't. No, this is corporate greed. That's what this is. Oil prices per barrel have actually fallen. And by the way, it spiked when you had speculation about the war in Ukraine. That drove up the price of futures. And again, this is going to what speculation is. I don't mean speculation as like, regular people are speculating that, I don't know, oil is going to be scarce or sparse. No, I mean Wall Street speculation. Wall Street speculators, well, what they do is they made trades based on what they believe the price of commodity will be in the future. So they're basically gambling and guessing on futures. We think that this will affect the price in the future. And so based on that analysis, we're going to either buy higher or lower, or sell higher or lower, and make trades based on that. And by the way, the trading is essentially run by software at this point that does numerous thousands of trades a minute. So if they say that oil is going to be worth more tomorrow because of what happened in Ukraine, and enough people agree with them, enough traders agree with them, or the software agrees with them, and they begin buying and selling those futures at higher prices, well, all that ends up going down the supply chain and ends up with you ultimately paying more at the pump. That's it. If that sounds insane and stupid, it's because it is. You would be correct, because it is. Look, the Republican Party is gaslighting you into thinking that the president is control of the gas prices. And what Rudy Giuliani, of course, is doing is feeding into that narrative to convince you that things were better under Trump. Yes, were gas prices lower during the pandemic? Yes. But we also had a fucking pandemic. So you could arguably say that it's worse. That it was worse. Just not the gas prices, but there are other things. Now, if you also didn't notice, by the way, in that video, he slipped in the big lie. It's like, oh, you're a criminal president. If we, hadn't been forced into voting for or getting a criminal president. No, a criminal president would be Donald Trump winning. And we already had that. And so, but the whole thing is a big setup for you to vote for Donald Trump in 2024. That's the game that Rudy and his friends and Donald Trump are playing, or these Republicans are playing. And of course, as always, they're built on lies. So there's that. Oh, but we have more. Let's get to the next segment. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani wants you to believe that Trump has been very tough on Russia. In fact, he said that he was allowed to tell you about a secret conversation that Trump had with Vladimir Putin. It talked about how tough he was going to be. Take a look.
He authorized me to say this, or I wouldn't say it as his lawyers. So he has a meeting with him, and he's telling him, they're talking about Ukraine, and he says, Vladimir, you shouldn't, attack Ukraine, because then I'm going to... Well, I never liked those big... What are those things you got in Moscow? Those big bubbles, those big gold bubbles. I never liked those things. So I'm going to have to blow them up. So Putin says, they're churches. He said, oh, Vladimir, don't tell me that about churches. I did, come on, churches. You can fool Bush, you can't fool me. Churches? You care about churches? That's what he's like.
Oh, you can fool Bush, but you can't fool me. What was it the Bush said, by the way? Yeah, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. You can't fool me again. Okay, fun. But hey, dumbass, not go ahead. Those are churches. Those are churches. The large gold domes in that picture are the tops of the Cathedral of Annunciation. That is the Russian Orthodox Church that was built in the 15th century. What did you think they were? Did you think they were mosques? I mean, honestly, what did you think they were? Oh yeah, sure, they're churches. Yeah, right. No, they are. That's what a literal church is. Okay. But look, knowing how much of a dumbass Donald Trump is, I guess I'm not really surprised that he reacted that way. I wouldn't put it past him, not knowing that they think that, not knowing what they are. Maybe he thought that they were mosques. I don't know. But look, even from an aesthetic standpoint, from the standpoint of color, he allegedly thought that they were ugly enough to bomb, which would again be literal open war with Russia. We don't want that. I don't want open war with Russia. So I'm against a no-fly zone. And so it doesn't make any sense, right? But speaking of aesthetics, right? No, you saw the picture of the Church of Annunciation, right? Or Cathedral of the Annunciation, and the ugly gold domes. Well, then let me ask you, what the fuck are those? What is this? What is this? That's the Trump Taj Mahal. That's what that is. I'm sorry. That's what that was. It's not the Trump Taj Mahal anymore, because guess what? Donald Trump went bankrupt and had to sell a casino for pennies on the dollar. Imagine being that bad of a big businessman that you bankrupt a casino, your own casino. Disaster. You think that guy called up Putin and was having a conversation, be like, oh, if you don't stay out of Ukraine, I'll bomb your churches. No, this conversation probably never happened. At least I'm sure they had conversations, but in those conversations, I can almost guarantee that Donald Trump was too busy kissing Vladimir Putin's ass to make any sort of threat. By the way, just like these Newsmax reporters are kissing ass, Giuliani, this is the amazing thing, right? Giuliani openly talks about Donald Trump wanting to bomb a Christian church in Russia. Again, first creating open war with Russia, okay? And secondly, bombing Christians. And yet, these guys, they're like, Donald Trump bombing Christian churches, that's a good one, that's great. Churches. These are the same people that love Donald Trump because he's a supposedly good Christian man. In fact, some look at him as like Jesus. Yeah, like a Jesus figure. And yet he's talking about blowing up churches, and they just laugh. Oh, isn't that so funny? We're going to bomb religious centers. Really? And of course, these same people then go back to this like, oh, now we're going to go back to how BLM and Antifa, they're the real terrorists. No, give me a break. This is ridiculous. I'm not even defending the church, by the way. I don't like religion. I don't agree with religion. But these people, their outright hypocrisy is absolutely amazing. Now, the question is, why is Rudy spouting this nonsense? Well, that's because that's what Rudy always does. But look, he's pushing a narrative, okay, that Donald Trump was going to be tough on Russia. And he said it there. Oh, this wouldn't have happened if Donald Trump was in charge. Really? Really? I'm pretty sure it would have. The response, though, would have been much different. I think that Donald Trump would have done next to nothing about it. No sanctions, nothing like that. He doesn't care about Ukraine. Rudy Giuliani doesn't care about Ukraine. The only reason they actually talked about it before, well, the only reason they talked about Ukraine and went to Ukraine, because I remember Rudy went there, is to try to dig up dirt on Joe Biden using Hunter Biden. That's it. It all goes back to the laptop, to the, to trying to use the money that Hunter Biden had gotten from a Ukrainian gas company. When he didn't know anything about oil and gas, it's ridiculous, right? But them trying to curry favor, political favor, with an incoming president of the United States, or a possible incoming president of the United States. And so, look, I mean, that's what you have. That's the only reason they actually care about Ukraine. They don't care at all about anything else. And so that's what the situation is. Okay? Donald Trump's foreign policy, understand, that's always had the same goal as his domestic policy. And that's to make himself rich and to punish his domestic political enemies. That's really it. Sad. Baby. Who calls their kid Hunter? Oh, ridiculous name. Ridiculous name. Oh, typical liberal propaganda. Yes, sure. Fun. It's good to know people are happy that I'm back. All right, let's move on. All right, let's go to some lawsuits. What if Hunter grows up to be vegan? Hunter's already grown up. I mean, I'm just, I don't know, it's weird. All right, anyway. Weird stuff. Let's move on. A pro-Trump group who wants to send armed thugs to your door to see if you've done any voter fraud and was a very, very naughty boy or girl is now being sued for being very naughty boys and girls. Fun. And it's actually, they're being sued under a law created to stop the Ku Klux Klan. So this is reporting from Salon, and basically they've noted that voting rights groups have filed this lawsuit in Colorado, aiming to stop the so-called U.S. election integrity plan led by a pro-Trump person named Sean Smith. By the way, he's an ally of former Trump strategist Steve Bannon and Mike Pillow. Now, this plan basically wanted to send, sometimes armed, sometimes not, members door-to-door to areas with large numbers of minority voters. Yes, questioning them about how they voted and taking photographs of their homes. Yes, if that seems like weirdo voter intimidation, you would be correct. The lawsuit is backed by the state chapter of the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, and Mi Familia Vota. So you got these pro-voting rights groups. Now, they allege that the campaign violates the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the KKK Act of 1871. So now the act was enacted to, well, it was to stop this, essentially. White armed militias, or just white armed groups, going around and terrorizing black people in order to try to stop them from voting. But wait, if you want black people to vote for you, all you have to do is do good policy that helps black people. I mean, that's really, really simple. Oh, yeah, right, you can't do that if you're a Republican because, well, I mean, for one, I've got to serve my corporate donors. And for two, racists are a big part of our base. If we actually help black people, then our base is going to get really mad at us. So, yeah. Now, the lawsuit cites the county and local organizing playbook used by the group, which instructs members to undertake citizen audit activities to either refute or confirm serious allegations of election malfeasance in order to support future legal action. Speaking of legal action, voter harassment and intimidation is illegal under the law. Section 11 of the Voting Rights Act makes it unlawful to intimidate, threaten, or coerce another individual at the polls. But they didn't say anything about their house. Because they're coming to your house. They're coming to your house. And they're gonna question you on how you voted. Well, I'm pretty sure that this would also apply, to being intimidation and harassment, especially since they're using debunked narratives of voter fraud. And notice how they're not targeting white people. They're going after heavily minority areas. So now, in addition to federal law prohibiting voter intimidation, each state also has its own statutes and laws prohibiting voter intimidation and establishing penalties for that intimidation. Now, the lawsuit claims that some members had even went so far as to try to impersonate federal officials in order to intimidate these voters. In fact, here's what the lawsuit claims. Sometimes armed and donning badges to present an appearance of government officiality, U.S. EIP agents interrogate voters about their addresses, whether they participated in the 2020 election, and if so, how they cast their vote, which again is not something that you have to tell anyone. We have the right to privacy as to who we voted for. We do not have to tell you. We don't have to tell the government or government officials. We don't have to tell anyone. It's privacy. Nonetheless, these people show up with badges and say, who are you voting for? Who did you vote for? Who did you vote for? Did you vote twice? Did you do voter fraud, you dirty fraudster? Yeah, you're going to get arrested for this. Well, what are you talking about, officer? We're just doing election security. We actually care. We care so much about voter integrity. Sure. Now, there's more. The complaint also states that it's reported that multiple agents have claimed to be from the county and have, without any evidence, falsely accused residents of casting fraudulent ballots. And as I mentioned, of course, they operate mainly in minority areas, so clear racist tactic to intimidate black people who, again, are viewed as mainly voting for Democrats. Again, if you want black voters, you want minority voters, you just have to have good policy. I mean, black voters aren't no voter is guaranteed. You actually have to do good policy positions in order to win people over. And look, you've seen Trump and Republicans make inroads with the Latino community. It is possible to reach other demographics. But you actually have to try for it. I know, it's a weird idea. Weird. But anyway, now, this group happens to be, a big believer in conspiracy theories. Again, along with the big lie, they also believe in QAnon. They're QAnoners. And many of the people involved happen to also be at the January 6th Capitol riots. Big surprise. Smith, the group's founder, for example, had attended Lindell's, Mike Pillow's election conspiracy symposium last year in South Dakota, along with former Colorado election clerk Tina Peters, who was indicted earlier this month for a role in leaking sensitive voting system data that was published by QAnon conspiracy theorists and right-wing websites. And then you also have an office in Colorado that said earlier this year that Smith had also convinced another election official, Elbert County Clerk and Recorder Dallas Schrader, to make copies of his office hard drives that he later gave to unauthorized people in violation of election rules. Who's breaking laws here? Who's breaking laws here? The guy who's going out to vote, or the person that's handing over sensitive voter data to randos? Who cares more about integrity? Really? Smith also led a lock her up chant while discussing Griswold, who is the person who is Colorado official that is a target of these right-wing attacks. In fact, here's what Smith said about her. If you're involved in election fraud, you deserve to hang. So, very nice. Classy group. Smith is also the president of another so-called election integrity group called Cause of America, also funded by Mike Pillow. The suit also names Smith and his co-founders, Holly Cosson and Ash Epp, who were also at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. Now, even with this group having some pretty extreme beliefs, that doesn't stop the Colorado Republican Party from openly working with them. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? The US EIP has teamed up with the Colorado Republican Party on its election integrity operations, according to the Times Recorder. A US EIP member is in charge of the GOP's program and has given joint presentations with Epp. The group's co-founder, Heidi Gannell, the leading Republican candidate for Colorado governor, promoted the group during a recent event, declaring that they are doing great things. Great things. Tremendous things. Like, scaring black people out of not voting. Now, there's one last thing about this group that I want to mention that I found a little ironic. It appears that for its membership, they have a vetting problem. In fact, the group's training manual says that the group intends to check volunteers a little bit more thoroughly by going through their social media and calling on them for a gut check, saying that leaders had learned that there were a couple of people in their group who were volunteering for the events who had a criminal history of, wait for it, sexual misconduct. It's unfortunate that we must check volunteers for pedophilic leanings. Isn't that ironic? And again, the reason that I mention that is that you have all these right-wing groups that claim to be pro-law, even though they break the law, by intimidating black people and doing voter intimidation. We're very, very pro-family, even though we're against pretty much every policy that helps working families. And against voter fraud, even though you have most of the in-person voter fraud actually being done by Republicans, and the times that it does happen by black voters is usually by accident. And of course, being against pedos, which we already know the story on that. You end up with people like Matt Gaetz, who's accused of sex trafficking a minor, or Roy Moore, or Donald Trump. None of them at all are at all pro-family, are oftentimes criminals or alleged criminals, and sometimes, yes, even alleged pedos. Weird. I think with this entire thing, you can kind of really chalk it up to methinks thou doth protesteth too much about the fraud. Let's move on. Let's go into the bots. All right. Following the Russian invasion of Ukraine, U.S. social media companies have either greatly restricted or outright banned Russian state media on their platforms. RT America, of course, no longer exists, and you have other companies. that have also, again, been eliminated. You had accounts, Russian state-affiliated accounts, that have been terminated. And now the claim here, and the reason that this has been happening, is the claim is the Russian bots and trolls have been elevating the right wing. They've been boosting the reach and engagement of large conservative pages who have been doing consistent disinformation. So now it turns out, according to a new analysis, the elimination of the Russian bots, because certainly there are a lot less people who are Russian able to access Facebook and Twitter these days. Well, the thinking is by, I guess, a lot of mainstream liberals is that, well, I mean, of course, the Russian bots are the only reason that these, and I'm speaking mainly about Facebook, but there's also Twitter and other platforms. That's why all these right-wing pages are so huge, because all they have are bots and troll followers. Now, it turns out that's actually not true. It's actually the companies themselves, these social media companies, as well as the algorithms that are boosting right-wing pages and accounts organically with Americans. So now there's a couple of different parts to the story. For one, it's debunking the idea that banning Russian state media from Facebook and Twitter had any sort of impact on the popularity of right-wing pages in the United States and their engagement. Secondly, it's actually how about these companies themselves and their business model, how they're set up to boost right-wing pages and accounts in the United States. So now, first, important to mention, are there indeed bot trolls and farms? Yes. Yes, there are. Those do exist. But what I've always said, and this goes all the way back to the election in 2016, where, you know, that's where the furor, the outrage over, you know, the Russian disinformation, etc., made it all over liberal media. And they blamed basically Hillary Clinton losing on two things: Bernie Sanders and Russian bots and trolls. Now, again, I've said before, I don't really think that it was a big part of Hillary Clinton losing, the Russian bots and trolls. And now this kind of backs that up, this, you know, analysis of what happens when you remove the bots and trolls. You still have the disinformation. You still have these right-wing pages that are just absolutely dominating on social media. So now, Media Matters for America, not exactly a conservative organization, right? They have recently compiled and analyzed Facebook posts from news and politics pages from all different parts of the spectrum, including politically or ideologically non-aligned. So they looked at the news and politics pages specifically, and they looked at it between January 1st and March 14th. Now, they found that there was no substantial change in engagement for right-leaning pages ever since Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th. And of course, that's when, afterwards, I should say, that's when a lot of these social media companies cracked down on Russian accounts and banned them. Okay, so now similarly, Dewey Square Group analyzed a number of trends and users across Twitter and found that there had been no substantial change in engagement for prominent right-wing accounts and narratives. So basically, it shows that it's not the Russians that were pushing the popularity and making these right-wing pages so incredibly popular. So let me show you a graph here. And I found this very interesting. So take a look. It's total interactions earned on posts for Facebook pages about US news. And it's between those two dates. So the right, or I should say the red, is right-wing pages. And that little sad little blue line, that's left-leaning pages. Yikes. So now, for 2022 overall, you had right-wing leaning Facebook pages that continued to dominate in terms of interactions compared to left-leaning and ideologically non-aligned pages. Average interactions per post from each type of page, right-leaning, left-leaning, and non-aligned, actually increased in the 19 days since the invasion compared to the 19 days before the invasion. But why? Well, it's because it's big news. A lot of people are talking about it, right? So now, the Facebook pages for Ben Shapiro and Breitbart had actually earned about nearly 14.5 million interactions and nearly 8.4 million interactions, respectively, on their posts since the Russian invasion, receiving roughly similar total daily interactions both before and after the attack. And the most unsurprising point, of course, is that its overall trends for narratives related to culture war issues remained unchanged. Unchanged. So now, that's important to point out. Why? Russia didn't start the U.S. culture war. Now, did the bots and trolls try to take advantage of it? Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? If you're trying to break the U.S. apart. But the conservative movement has always fought the culture wars. In fact, that's what they're all about. You don't need the Russian bots to do it. Now, on Twitter, they found out that there was also no decrease in the number of recently created accounts posting on those social war topics or culture war topics, such as, not so much for climate change, but they also posted about climate change, but Black Lives Matter as well, and of course, conspiracy theories about George Soros. Engagement metrics for prominent right-wing Twitter users Scott Presler, Mike Cernovich, Donald Trump Jr., and Matt Schlapp also remain unchanged from February 5th to March 7th. So they found, once again, no significant reduction in right-wing content or engagement as a result of banning Russian accounts. I think that is very important, very noteworthy. Now, it's also disturbing. So the other thing, too, is that where does that leave left-wing commentators? Well, it leaves us in a pretty bad place. It shows you how completely underrepresented the left is when it comes to impressions and views on social media. In fact, on Facebook, right-leaning pages, and I've got a graph that I'm going to pull up for that too. Right-leaning pages earn nearly 550,000 interactions, or 42% of total interactions earned on posts from news and politics pages between January 1st and March 4th, while ideologically non-aligned pages made over 60% of posts. So here's that. So look at the left-wing pages. Sure, less posts. In fact, it's about half. And as such, look at the engagement, the interactions. It turns out that I think a lot of the liberals went back to brunch after Joe Biden won the election. While Republicans, of course, I guess understandably, are more engaged than ever because they were on the losing end. But the other thing that is part of this, and that it's a big component here, is the culture war. In fact, since the beginning of this year, right-leaning pages on Facebook have dominated both posts and interactions related to topics such as critical race theory, which is not taught in schools, not taught in K through 12. LGBTQ issues, mainly trans rights, or the fact that they want to take away transgender rights, so-called parents' rights, and more. Between January 1st and March 15th, right-leaning pages have earned 13.3 million interactions on more than 6,200 posts related to these issues. These posts accounted for over 66% of all posts related to these issues from politics and news pages, and nearly 73% of interactions. On Twitter, they found no sign of inauthentic activity in right-wing discussions, and no noticeable drop in engagement for high-profile right-wing users after the purging of Russian accounts. So what's going on here is it's not exactly the case of the Russians creating troll farms and bots to create a culture war. It's the right wing in the US pushing the culture war and using the Facebook algorithm and other social media algorithms to amplify it. And by the way, these social media outlets are massively in favor of the right wing. And so now, here's the thing. Right-wing content is, you may or may not have noticed, it is very inflammatory. It causes people lots of emotions. That emotion generally is anger, which again fuels engagement, interactions. I can tell from some of the hate posts that I get that people are very angry at some of the things that I say. Imagine that. I want poor people to live in dignity. How dare you, you fucking liberal. Okay, all right. Sure. Get angry, right? You're only boosting my engagement, but that's how it works. The algorithm then picks up on that algorithm, and that engagement, and guess what? It starts showing it to other people. And that fuels more engagement, more outrage, and that's how this entire thing spreads. This is called algorithmic amplification. And it's not by accident that it works this way. In fact, according to Mother Jones, near the end of the first year of the Trump presidency, Facebook engineers noticed this and noticed that, oh wow, this is amplifying a lot of right-wing content, a lot of pro-Trump stuff. Now, Facebook engineers had told their executives and said, look, we have some proposed changes to make this a little bit better, so that, we can change how posts are ranked by the algorithm that programs your newsfeed. Now, the goal the company said at the time was to show users more content from friends and family and to prioritize trusted and informative news sources. Well, that would be nice, right? But that's not what happened. The executives had asked the engineers, okay, that sounds great, except how will that affect the biggest right-wing news outlets on Facebook? Which happen to be Breitbart, Gateway Pundit, and Daily Caller. So now, according to a former Facebook employee with knowledge of the conversations, the testing of that change on the feed revealed that it would take actually a huge chunk out of the traffic of right-wing sources of those three different outlets. The three major pushers of disinformation and conspiracy theories. Now look, Daily Caller, yes, less so than Gateway Pundit, which is pure trash. Now, in response to this, the ex-employee said that Facebook leadership freaked out and said, we can't do this. How dare we harm our beloved right wing? They give us tax cuts and deregulation. They let us do whatever the hell we want. Of course we're going to be on the right wing. The engineers were then told to go back to the drawing board. And in January 2018, they returned with the second iteration of the algorithm that mitigated harm to right-wing publishers and went after, you guessed it, progressives. Yes, they went after progressives' left-wing pages because, of course, their presentation had included a slide with the Mother Jones highlighted as one of the news sites that would suffer from less engagement. In fact, here's what that ex-employee told Mother Jones at the time, quote, the problem was that the progressive outlets were real news outlets like yours, and the right-wing ones were garbage outlets. You guys were one of the outlets who got singled out to balance the ledger. Those changes were also, by the way, pushed by Facebook's Washington office, which in the Trump era was led by Republican operatives and headed by Vice President of Global Public Policy, Joel Kaplan, who is a former Bush White House official. Yes. Now, during the 2016 presidential campaign as well, another ex-Facebook employee told Mother Jones, it was made clear that we can't do a ranking change that would hurt Breitbart, even if that change would make the news feed better. Well, we can't have that, of course. And again, I'm not even in favor. I'm not in favor of reducing or eliminating right-wing content. I think that's fine. Right-wing content is fine. In fact, if there were no right-wing content, I wouldn't have anything to push back on. So, I think it's fine. You have an opinion that's different than mine. You should be able to post on Facebook. The thing that I have a problem with, or YouTube or Twitter, etc. But the problem that I have is that this is not an even playing field. This is not, we don't have an even playing field we've been screwed over by the algorithm. And so here you have right-wing content that is being artificially pumped up by the algorithm changes pushed by right-wing members that are high up in Facebook leadership. And again, this is the same thing on other social media platforms. That's the real issue. We should all have our voices be equal on this playing field and then see whose ideas are better. And before all these different algorithm changes, you actually had left-wing pages that were doing tremendously well. But then, here we go. We had somebody come in and intervene, just like with the fact checks on Facebook that I've talked about before, that artificially tilt the playing field in favor of the right wing. Now, this isn't the first time, by the way, they've been caught favoring the right. In fact, in December 2016, senior leaders were briefed on an internal assessment known as Project P, P standing for propaganda, showing that right-wing accounts, most of them based overseas, were behind a lot of the viral disinformation on the platform. But the Washington Post has reported, and by the way, they're probably overseas for tax reasons, let's be honest with you. The Washington Post reported Kaplan objected to disabling all of the accounts because it would, quote, disproportionately affect conservatives. Shocker. In 2017 and 2018, according to the Wall Street Journal, Facebook launched an initiative called Common Ground, which, along with several proposals, suggested slowing down the spread of content from so-called super sharers. Now, super sharers, of course, are basically those are accounts that will aggregate hyper-polarizing content and do lots and lots of clickbait. Now, another initiative suggested that slowing down the spread of political clickbait, which the company's data showed emanated mostly from conservative accounts. Their proposals, however, all of them were subject to vetting by Kaplan's team and were largely rejected. So if anybody who's being, is being silenced and suppressed by big tech, it's actually the left. And it's been that way for quite some time. Anybody who's screeching about, oh, we can't ban a conservative account because they're going to come after the left, well, you're a little late on that. They came after the left first. And now left-leaning pages and accounts are just devastated. Absolutely devastated. And so we've all seen it. Facebook, YouTube, dominated by right-wing creators. And they've been given unfair advantages by the algorithms. Now, the refrain, by the way, and this is according to Matali Jan, the legal director at Avaz, who noticed this, right? Saying the refrain that we hear from conservative lawmakers about the bias against conservative outlets, all the evidence that we've seen suggests the opposite. That's the reality here. Now, if you are somebody who wants to make money doing news and politics on YouTube and Facebook and other platforms, right? Well, you'd be stupid to be a left-leaning channel on YouTube or Facebook. That explains why some certain creators who want to make money, and I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to make money, as long as you do it in an honest way, if you're honest about your beliefs. But, the money thing is, I think, why certain channels have veered off towards anti-vax conspiracy theories and now completely focus on attacking the left over whether it be culture war issues or other nonsense. The ones that haven't changed, well, at least you know who's legit because they're not making all that much money. Being on the left is actually pretty terrible for your bank account. And it's because you have outlets that are intrinsically against you, inherently against you. And they show their bias. And it's very, very obvious. In fact, let's see. There's a quote here that says there are forces and voices within Facebook that intervene. This is, again, Matali Jan here. saying that there are forces and voices within Facebook that intervene in what are supposed to be politically neutral actions and change them to achieve political end. Now, look, I have no idea what to do about this, honestly. We live in a reality where the left has no power, no money, no real media that can compare with the reach the right has. We had a situation earlier where these social media platforms had democratized media, left-wing media. And that's actually a situation where left-wing media had thrived for quite some time. But the increased corporatization, well, I mean, that's when the left got in trouble. And that's when the left got suppressed. When they got too good, when they got too big. And so they had to clamp down on that. Because our message resonates with the American people. And so, look, we also do not have powerful allies in Congress that will come to our behalf or even come on our platforms. Look, this isn't an issue with Russian bots and Russian trolls, which again do exist. It's the issue of the platforms themselves. Censorship, I'll agree, is not the answer. The answer would be for these companies to start treating all their political content equally within the same algorithm, favoring no side over the other, letting them actually have a battle for the ideas or a battle of ideas and see who wins. But unfortunately, as long as these companies are private and for profit, they're run by the shareholders who are going to make profit for their owner donors, right? Well, look, they're gonna boost whatever side helps them do that. So we're never going to get that support. We're never going to get that even playing field. And so we're going to have to fight twice as hard to get out our message. And by the way, any attempt at changes that purport to stop disinformation usually ends up hitting the left, and we've seen this happen already. And so, unfortunately, this is the very sad state of left-wing media in this country. It's partly why we don't win elections, because we can't get out our message effectively. And it's why, why even though things are incredibly popular that we believe in, that we post, and that we talk about, just don't get out there. It's sad. And so, I mean, that's our situation. God help us all. We need a real media in this country that can actually compete on this even playing field against conservative content and platforms that treat us all the same. And unfortunately, we don't have that. God help us all. If it continues like this, there's no win in our future. All right. All right. I was going to talk about the Babylon Bee story. You know what? I'll go over time just this once. I'll make it quick. The parody account for satire site Babylon Bee has been suspended over a transphobic article. Now, the website recently tweeted an article which announced Rachel Levine, the transgender Biden administration official, the title of Man of the Year. Classy. Classy, of course. The Babylon Bee story was a reaction to the USA Today's naming of Levine, who was U.S. Assistant Secretary for Health for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, as one of its Women of the Year last week, right? So now the banned article notes, the banned tweet, the article is still up. And I'm going to show you what they added to that later on. But the banned tweet that contained the article noted that Levine serves proudly as the first man in that position to dress like a Western cultural stereotype of a woman. This entire thing is gross, by the way. Just absolutely gross. Saying, he is also an admiral in the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps. What a boss. He often wears a dress, which some people think is weird, but he doesn't care one bit. The article continues, come on, men in India wear dress-type garments, don't they? So obviously, dude, this is grossly anti-trans. They even go so far as to dead name Rachel, saying that he changed it to Rachel for some strange reason a few years ago. Who cares? Who said a dude as accomplished as this can't be named Rachel? So look, the reason that I'm reading you those quotes is to show you how bad it is and just how absolutely disgusting the narrative is. And they think this is funny. This is what passes for comedy on the right wing. Isn't that amazing? This is comedy to them. Like they look at this and they're like, oh, yeah, man in a dress. It's so funny. No, it's stupid and incredibly harmful. Look, Rachel Levine's appointment to this post, this is a model for trans people. A huge accomplishment for equality. It's a wonderful thing. But no, they continue, right, by writing this horrific article. And again, oh, it's under the guise of satire. This blatantly transphobic crap. This is, oh, what are you talking about? It's just a joke. It's just a joke. Yeah, it's that one joke. The one joke conservatives actually have. The one joke. So now, of course, this got flagged for hate speech, right? Now, Twitter has a policy and cited it as hateful content, which states that you may not promote violence against, threaten, or harass other people on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, religious affiliation, age, disability, or serious disease. Twitter says that it will only restore the account after the 12-hour suspension if they delete the tweet. Now, of course, what are they going to do? Well, they're not going to delete the tweet because, of course. CEO Seth Dillon said this, oh, we're not deleting anything. Truth is not hate speech. If the cost of telling the truth is the loss of our Twitter account, then so be it. You want to talk about the truth? No, you're attacking somebody for no reason other than the fact that you don't like their identity. That's it. You're being absolutely capricious and cruel for no reason. No reason at all. It's not clever. It's not funny. There's no substance to this. There's no policy critique. If you want to go after her for something that she did in her job, well, that's one thing, right? That's a substantive critique. But no, you're just going to pick out an immutable characteristic, okay, about somebody. The fact that she's a transgender woman. And you're just going to pour on the pure vitriol over that. That's it. And again, it's not even clever. It's lazy. It's boring. Oh, it's the one joke conservatives have, which is I identify as an attack helicopter. That's it. That's the attack helicopter joke. All over again. What part of that is actually funny? Where's the humor in this? There is no humor. Shut up. Y'all are super lame. Maybe if you actually put out real funny content and thought for a moment, other than ha man in a dress, you might actually get some viewers. You might actually make something that's hilarious and poke fun at Democrats. I have no problem with poking fun at Democrats. I have no problem with people making jokes about Democrats if they're actually fucking funny. If they're funny, I'll be like, yeah, you got me, right? But this isn't funny. This is disgusting. Real comedy does challenge the status quo. Absolutely. As Jim Adelberg in the comment section points out, this does not. This doesn't challenge the status quo. Status quo is anti-trans. You are defending the status quo when you attack trans people, when you attack the LGBTQ community. I mean, it's ridiculous. Disgusting. No, you're lame. You're super unfunny. And it's really dumb. And worse now, by the way, not only did they double down, but they're also crying victim. you know, it's almost as if, for me, they did this on purpose. Why? Because they knew the rules on social media, and they went out and flagrantly broke the rules on harassment. Why? So they could get suspended, so that they can come out later and double down and then cry about being suspended. And guess what? They already have had countless articles written about this. And guess what? That's going to get them in the search results, the algorithm. That's going to boost the visits to their website, which is going to boost their revenue when they have ads. So congratulations. You've done everything that you wanted. You got a gigantic boost. This is exactly what you wanted. This is what they did. This illustrates how the culture war, how the conservative culture war outrage is able to be gamed for monetary purposes. And that's exactly what this disgusting attack is. It's just to make money. What horrible, disgusting people are these for doing this absolute crap? That's just who they are. All right. They went to the Greg Gutfeld School of Comedy. I still haven't heard Greg Gutfeld tell an actual real joke. Maybe Greg Gutfeld is the joke. Maybe that's it. But hate speech disguised as a parody. Nope. Yeah. All right. So look, massively out of time. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Please like and share the stream. Very important that you do so. Please like and share our videos. We are way behind. So it was nice to have a week off, but boy, is that disastrous for views. And especially when it comes to revenue, being honest about that. All right, so let me read a couple of super chats here before I leave. Let's see. Shocked me by reading this. It says, "Missed you. Hope you got well rested. Considering the level of suckage in the news, love from Tennessee, where suckage is painful and deep fried." No, yes. Actually, I believe we're going to have a story about Tennessee tomorrow that we're planning on, which is horrifying. So, all right. Jim Adelberg says, "Thanks for being in FYI Nation." I actually was on last Thursday having a conversation, so I tweeted that out. Hopefully you were able to see that. And Gabby Mathis says, "I have not turned on the TV to watch MSM in over a year. Get my news from left-wing media." Well, good, because mainstream media is decidedly not left-wing. So there's that. All right, thank you, Gabby, Jim, and shocked me by reading this. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow, so no worries. Vacation over, and we're going to be back to doing the normal schedule. So we'll see you back here at 4 p.m. Eastern. Again, like and share. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Tell everyone. We're back. And thank you. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. We'll see you all later. Have a great night.
I will eat your ass.
How you like that, boy?
Mike Pounds.
It's like shark potato, except it's big, massive dump.
Who's got a hammer? Clean coal, meaning to take it out cold. They're going to clean it.
Disappointed!
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.